I trust today, and not because it's me, but because it's the Word of God, that there's still a chance that we can go home and we can say, we got something from God's Word to take us to the next step. I have probably said this many times already, and I will many more times yet, but can you read the Bible, and then as you read the Bible, it gives you kind of that 1, 2, 3 thing for today, and you say, wow, the exact situation where I'm in, there's the Bible, and that gives me the next step. Many people, they know the Bible, they read the Bible, they grew up with the Bible, and yet the Bible to them is like a pantry to many men is, and that is we as men, and I don't know if you are like that, but I would sometimes go into the pantry and, it's good to see. You know what my wife and the girls, they've done a lot of cooking and canning, and there's so much food, and there's stuff in the freezer. And you know, me growing up, having a lot of sisters, I am unexercised when it comes to these things. I look into the pantry, there's lots of food, but should the day come that I would have to get stuff out of there and bring that to the transfiguration, is that how you would call that? To make something from off the pantry shelf that you could put into your mouth and you would actually enjoy it. There's a step in between, and that some of us as men, we would have a hard time to deal with that. We would go away, we would go try to eat somewhere else, but we would have a hard time to make something for our mouth out of our own pantry. You know, that's maybe a little bit shameful, but but that is how some people find the Bible. If I could only do that for me, people would wish. In order for us to be able to make the Bible do that for us, it takes a relationship with the one who wrote the Bible. It takes a very personal relationship with me and God. And so that's why I stand here and I say, hey, the Bible is still here. It has something for us nowadays. So here we are, and that is what gives me enthusiasm or passion to go at it. This morning, and as I prepared through the week on this subject, searching what to preach, here's the subject. How should I conduct myself in this time? And let me be clear, what I have on my mind when I say this time, I'm thinking exactly that. This time specifically referring to the last 2 years when we were hit with a wave of what they call COVID-19, and with that came what we have mistrusted. With that has come challenges. With that has come a host of information that many of us have read and been involved with, some a lot less. That's the this time meaning of today's message, okay? So when I refer to this time, I want you to know that's what I'm referring to. So, what is that? The situation of these days, what would we call them? As a church, and that's where I like to focus it in. As a church, we have been brought into these challenging times. We cannot blame anybody of us. It's just we have been surrounded. We have dealt with a lot of details in the last 2 years that we had never expected. Sometimes we didn't even know how to share and how to relate to each other about them because they were strange and we didn't like it. We have now lived for almost 2 years with the dominating subject called COVID-19, restrictions, vaccine, and mandates, and the more. We were pushed into having to apply and to live with government rules and regulations, restrictions that we could not say, that we can just ignore that. We have been in that. This has drawn our attention many, many times to the regulations of the public. We have discussed, we have done research, some of us a lot, some of us very little. We have been exposed to so much information, as people called it. After 2 years, we have to deal with a lot of very different opinions right in our church. What do we think of the vaccine? We simply see it very different, perhaps. How do I involve myself in convoys or protests? These are new challenges. We deal with them. We cannot say, oh, they don't exist. They are here. They're right among us. Everybody of you knows what I'm talking about. What we probably feel is that we respond very differently. What we all share, though, is we are all tired of this stuff. Yet we are almost forced to keep thinking, planning, wondering about it on a daily basis. To some of these details are huge, to the point they could call them sin, or almost sin. To others, it's a smaller matter, and they just make a decision, move on with life. We come to ask the question, are we even on the same page as a church or as friends? Or perhaps we come to the question sometimes, what kingdom am I after all building? You know, this whole thing has turned things upside down. What am I dealing with? We could ask the question, maybe we even do, is this perhaps a beginning of a splitting and crumbling of our church, leaving us in shattered pieces as a church family? I will insert here, I don't believe that it is, okay? But we ask the question sometimes. But I don't believe it. It's okay to ask the question. In times past, we have seen things happen like churches crumbling into pieces. Perhaps some of us were part of such. Many times, later, we look back and we kind of say, well, why would such a thing have caused such a huge issue? We're all on the same trail still. We are puzzled how some of those details have managed to become so big as we look back. Now, I want us to think about it this way. I want us to be aware of something. We live today in a time when, in a little bit from now, we will start to look back at it. We will soon be looking back at what we're doing today, or what we have done in the last 2 years. In fact, we can already look back and from 2 years. Now, we kind of like that because what has happened in the past so often is totally clear. That was totally off, or that was totally good. It's clear. It's a black and white. Sometimes we refer to it as a 20/20 vision. But while we are right in it, that's the part we wish to have, is the 20/20 vision, the clarity of it. And yet, while we're in it, sometimes it is where we just simply are a little bit confused or just don't seem to know. And we get troubled about it. That is part of this time. The question is, how will we move through this time, coming out stronger and more victorious? I stand before you today as your brother with the full assurance that this is a possibility. that we will move. Now I'm referring to us as a church family. We could individualize this, and we need in parts, but that this is not a time where we will lose, but we live in a time where we could lose. We live in a time where many do lose, and we live in a time where many of us have been challenged to get discouraged. How will we move through this time, coming out stronger and more victorious? I'm taking the text out of 2 Peter chapter 3. You will like that chapter. You probably know what is in there. 2 Peter chapter 3. This is in the last few years. I think it's the third time I'm preaching out of this chapter. I'm not going to be just in the chapter. But this is a chapter that is specifically having in mind a lot of persecuted people, the way I read it, or challenging times. This was the time where somehow Peter felt that it was necessary to remind them that God was not slack in his promises, because I take out of that many people said, it's already time. I mean, you have said this now, it's time for God to return, and he's not back still. And people were getting impatient or giving up on this idea. That's my own assumption. So now we will not read all of that. Let's go to verse 11, and then we'll pick it up there. And it says, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of person ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat? Did you notice that we were reading a question? It's two verses that make one question. Now let's read it again, and we're asking a question. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of person ought ye to be in the holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat? The question seems more like an answer than the question. If you read the Bible, that's how I would have read it for many times. It actually gives you quite a bit of answers already in the question. It speaks about the manner of persons of a holy conversation and godliness, and looking and hasting for the coming of the day, and where everything shall dissolve in fire. And then it ends up with a question. It is actually a question. So the answer comes now in verse 13 and on, and it says, nevertheless. So here's now your answer. The question is, I'll go back to verse 11. What manner of person ought ye to be? That's where you find the question part in it. So if we would miss the rest of the next verse and a half, now we would come to the answer, verse 13. It says, nevertheless, we. That word we, I have already emphasized that many times in the past, but it's just so lovely to find the Bible that speaks about me, we, us. You know what? There is the melting of the elements with great noise. That's what we haven't read, but that's the verses before. That's all going to happen. It's going to be a very scary time based on the description of that. That's going to happen to somebody, to somewhere. But that's what I like. Nevertheless, we. And so today I want to include and make you feel as that is we. You are part of the we here, okay? We are all part of the we. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that we look, you look for such things, be diligent, that ye may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless. So we are in a time where, struggles and challenges will be, but we are looking for something that's coming. Back in the days when I grew up, we lived where we lived, we could see traffic. Let's say my dad or somebody would be in the city, and they would come home. This was evening. I remember my mom and me, younger siblings, we would sometimes sit at the window, and Mom was waiting for Dad to come home. I remember those days. And so we could look out the window, and then way out there on a hill, the traffic, when it came home from the city, you would see the traffic. You would see lights, okay? That's all you saw. From when you were driving down that hill till where you were home was about 35, 40 minutes in my dad's case. So we would sit there, and I would be just watching traffic coming through town, and then all of a sudden my mom would say, you know what, let's watch the clock. 40 minutes from now, then Dad will be home. And she saw the light over there. And so, but you know what? Then we knew it was raining. And in those days, we didn't have the luxury of bridges. Some of you don't know what life would be without bridges, but we didn't have bridges. And so it would rain, and the dirt roads would become muddy and soft. And so there was chances that, you know, this 40 minutes could be 2 hours. It might even not come before morning. And so when Dad would come home, the questions would be asked. So how was the road? How did you made it through the creeks? And not that this literally, I don't remember this literally, but it would be part of many conversations. It's sort of like the snowdrifts nowadays. You leave and you want to get somewhere, and you know there's snowdrifts, but you still dare to go out. And then as soon as your visitors come, you all ask, how were the roads, okay? And then you say, well, the roads were terrible, and the snow was flying and I couldn't see, but I wanted to get here. Same as our dad, he wanted to get home. So he dared to get through this mud and through the creeks, and sometimes they would get stuck. In this time that we are in, I want to take us quickly on a fast forward, and there will be a time when we will look back. But let's just picture we are before God's presence, and God asks you and me, how come you didn't give up? You know what? There was all these challenges. What kept you going? It's good to have you here. It's finally victory day. What kept you going? And then you will say, God, I kept looking. I didn't mind the challenge. I just kept looking. And it made my journey so much better because I am looking. Are you getting it? Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, be diligent. So it's our focus. It's our spiritual focus. Now, the example that I have was my dad, he wanted to come home. The plan was to get home and to be at home for the night with the family. But you and I, we look forward. We have a focus. We look at the new heavens. We look at the new earth. While we are tempted and challenged, we keep looking. We keep looking. There will be the day that all will be righteous. We will be with the righteous Father himself. Corruption and all this stuff that we are so tired of and wish so much it to be gone, it will all have cleared away, and we will be in the middle of righteousness. We ourselves will be totally righteous indeed, like nowadays we're righteous by faith. We could say through the blood of Jesus. But in the midst of all this corruption that you and I work with and the challenges we work with, the challenge today is, are you still looking? What are we focusing on in this time? What's the focus? We cannot get entangled, and I say this as a brother, but we cannot get entangled with the current corruption and challenges that this world has. We cannot expect that is going to change. It might change a little, but it's never going to go away. That's the world that we live in. It's carnal. It's just world. We look for something else. We cannot get entangled as long as we keep looking, as long as we keep moving forward. Because we're looking. Now there's that word, and I don't know if you know how you would define that. Take it to your school classes tomorrow and study that part. But what's that word hasting? It says in verse 12, 12. I lost my verses here. We're looking. Yes, thank you. You're right. Looking for and hasting. I just needed to point that out. That word hasting doesn't seem right in the place the way I use grammar in my life. But the word hasting sounds more like hurrying and do things quick. But if you study that, it means await with eager desire. You know, you sense that eagerness. You know, is it time? I wish it was time already. It's the hasting. I'm eagerly waiting for the future coming of the Lord Jesus. This is what influences my actions. This is in the time that we're in, that we're needing to be in the hasting mode. It's influencing my actions. It is here where our battles often have been the hottest in the last 2 years, because our battles were so intense by our surroundings. We were influenced by current situation. There was no other way. We were influenced, every one of us. But the big question is, have the surroundings influenced us more than the looking? The big question is, how do I know? How do I know? I mean, this is real. This is daily reminders. But the influence of the surrounding situation will destroy us if we allow that to take over. How do I know? A man was asked the question years ago, if you are wrong, will you like to know that? And the person had to face a challenge. If I say, no, I don't want to know that, that wouldn't sound right. Yet he was completely determined that I am right. And yet he knew the very person that asked him the question knew whether he was right or not. The honest, sad truth is, people can come to places where they say, don't tell me. I'm bringing my lesson to the teacher, but I do not want to know whether that's 100%. Just pass it anyway. It's probably one of the most difficult things in Christianity to say, God, examine my heart and see if there's any wickedness in me, and then to surrender to the idea, and if I will realize I'm wrong, I'm going to admit. And I'm willing to change course. Am I still looking? Have I lost my vision? You know what? How do you find it in your life? Are you putting more effort into spreading and expressing your situation, your attitudes, and your information about the COVID-19 and all the things that come with that? Has that become bigger to you than to be concerned about the eternal values of the people around you? Check your hearts. Are we losing focus? Have we lost it? This is important stuff. We will have to deal with both. But which has become priority? And all my freedoms that I have had in the last 2 years, have the lonely felt that I had the freedom to come and visit them and to comfort them? Have the widows been encouraged and comforted? Have the spiritually struggling been encouraged? We had the freedom all the time. It has never been taken away from us. Maybe challenged a little bit, but it has always been there. As I prepared, I came across this verse in Luke chapter 18, verse 8. It's the challenging question of Jesus Christ. You know, we would not like it if we were being asked the question, I guess, but Jesus asked the question to whoever he was addressing in Luke chapter 18. This week, I had a very unique, in my little life, it seemed to be a bigger opportunity to have a lunch appointment in the legislative building with one of the politicians. And of course, I grabbed the idea and I went. I felt the need to go and talk to him about my church. And that's what I did. As I prepared, as I got the opportunity, and as I went, I was thinking to myself, and I was reading this verse. If the politicians, provincial levels of politicians would tell me, you know, Ronald, if we would take all restrictions away from your church, and I could come and attend your church, would I find faith? And I'm thinking, yes, I think you would find faith. I think you would find faith. Would I find faith in all your brothers? What is it that I have seen and heard about your church? Is that faith? Oh, please forgive. No, not all of that is. In fact, a lot of that is just the same as what you hear in the world. I'm sorry. You know what? Jesus in Luke chapter 18, he's dealing with this widow and the judge. And, we get the impression the judge was a careless, corrupt judge who couldn't care less about people's needs. And so this widow comes and begs again and again, and she's troubled. But he doesn't listen. That's the story. And then eventually, after a long time, which to the widow must have seemed a very long time, he listens and he does something about it, perhaps. And that's the teaching. But the verse here today is verse 8. I tell you that he will avenge them. That he, that would, in my opinion, that refers to God, but we'll leave that. There's somebody in power over the judge that has the power to avenge the judge's misconduct. I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. That's the word that caught my attention. Speedily. What does that word mean, speedily? That means like very quick. So God is going to avenge the judge speedily. Like all his corruption, I'm going to do away with that very quickly. But will I find faith? That's my focus. God could be looking at you and me today and say, all your troubles, and some of us are over 70 years old and will hopefully live another many more years. All those troubles, they are in the eyes of Jesus considered speedily, like quickly. But after all that is gone, will there be faith? That's the big question. People would like to think that after 2 years of having been challenged, it gives me sort of the right to get discouraged. It gives me somewhat the right to think that this is just not right. Humanly speaking, clearly understandable. But shall he find faith on earth? That's the question. Challenging question. Speedily. Will there be faith? Now we come to my third point. The serious fall of what repentance was needed, or where it was needed. Revelation chapter 2. The times that we are in, they challenge us in many ways. Revelation chapter 2, this church had a serious problem. And it says unto the angel of the church at Ephesus, write, these things write I unto you, that holdeth the 7 stars in the right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. I know thy works, thy labor, thy patience, how thou canst not bear them which are evil, and how thou hast tried them which say they are apostles and are not, and hast found them liars. Goes hand in hand with what Peter had in the Sunday school opening, or somewhat hand in hand. And has, verse 4, nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. That's the problem. The problem is so big that you have to repent. Remember, therefore, from whence thou hast fallen. I use the example, we keep looking, but you quit looking. A while ago, you quit looking, you fell. You don't love me anymore. You have fallen away from the love. The first love, that's referring to the love to God. You have fallen away. Remember, therefore, from whence thou art fallen, and repent. This church had simply lost its first love. The love that we are to have for God. As the first commandment says, thou shalt love God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind. That's the love that they had fallen away. You have become lovers of something else. We read about lovers of themselves, and we read about lovers of their own bellies. We read about hatred and, all these things. Have you been challenged with this? I have. Some days pretty seriously so. I have felt very challenged. This church still had a busy, good church life. I think Dennis had the other time something reading about in his devotion about doing a lot of things, but not having the love. These people, they knew exactly who was evil. And it sounds like they even had a right sense of judgment because they couldn't even bear them. They are complimented for that part. Probably a laboring church, many challenges and busy times. But in all of this, they had somehow lost their love. Somehow lost the focus. The candlestick, as it's referred to, was missing, and the world didn't see the light anymore. It had gotten dim. There was perhaps outward difference, but the power was gone. The only way was to repent. Have you ever heard somebody repenting, saying, I realize that I have lost my passionate love for God? I realize I have become selfish. And because I'm selfish, I am easily disturbed. Maybe we don't even realize that. Let me ask you a personal question. How concerned are you and I that the way you think, the way you plan, and the way we are having an attitude, how concerned are you that your attitude is pleasing to God? As you think, or maybe it's in your conversations, is it pleasing to God? And if I say, I don't know, I don't think about it that way. Wake up, we're somewhere drifting. We're somewhere drifting. Is it concerning to you when you find yourself entering a challenge and you know this is your carnal mind is just opposing this idea with all of its might, that in itself might not be off? Do you find yourself to becoming concerned that I am now in a position where my flesh is going to put shame to the name of Christ? Is it a concern? It needs to be. If it's not, you and I have probably lost the light, and we need to repent. My last point, the mark or the goal. Philippians 3 verse 14. I press. Even though it's Old King James, but the terminology is just so absolutely wonderful. I press. I allow you to make a picture. What does it mean to press? Towards the mark for the price of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. This is, I am pressing towards. Just imagine, and we have probably been in this pressing sometime, somehow, during this winter months with all our snow. But you see there's a snowdrift. What do? You press it down and you give it juice. That's how we say it, right? Because we need to get across. I'm pressing down. Because that's what it takes to get through. We can't all wait for the snow to get cleared. We have to press through. That's a good example. And so are we. For what? For what? The high calling. That's the calling. And brothers and sisters, the time that we are in, we need to have this high calling very clear. What am I pressing towards? 2 Peter 2 verse 14, we were there before. Part of verse 14 says, be diligent. That word is used in Peter. He must have been a diligent man. but he used that word many times. Be diligent that ye may be found of him in peace. Oh, that was a testimony somewhere this morning about how God gives us peace. Peace. Again, we have experienced this in our challenges, how sometimes we can just lay it all down, just lay it down. Yeah, I don't see eye to eye. Yeah, it bothers me greatly what this or the other person says. Reminds me of a big challenge that I had a little while ago. Personally, I was really, really challenged in my mind. I don't think people around me saw it, but I was really, really challenged with a version of a idea that somebody had. Just really challenged me. You know, I felt that in me there was a stirring coming up in me that was just, oh, this is not good. At the same time, this thing also tended to almost scare me. So what if everybody would start to act like this? Now we're going to fly into many pieces. Now this is all church related. Maybe that's just what a pastor needs to do sometimes. As I went to bed, I was heavy-hearted. And I didn't know how can we deal with this. I prayed and I didn't know how to deal with this. By the grace of God, by the time morning came around and I woke up and this thing came back into my mind, well, I had done a lot of thinking during the night, thanks to, and I had come to peace. I cannot say this to brag, not of me, for the grace of God, yes. I had come to a peaceful conclusion with an unsettled matter, and that was, I could feel it in me that I have determined to love this individual regardless of what kind of decisions this individual will make. I will love, I will accept. That's my only way. Probably not agree, but love, yes. We live in this time. We live in this time. And then peace ruled my heart. Pursue it. Be diligent to find this peace. Marcela and me have talked about the same incident or situation several times. Every time it comes up, I feel it in me that peace is still there. But I was in a time where this is not going to work, and you will find out this does not work. I am going to react. I need to let you hear my meaning as well. No. We live in a time where we pursue peace. God will lead us through. God will lead us through. This is peace. Revelation 2 verse 5. Remember therefore from whence thou art fallen and repent. That was to love God with all our hearts. That is what the call is today. We need to refocus. We need to check our focus. Are you still in love with God with all of your heart? Many of us have felt restricted. We have felt our freedoms taken from us. And we were challenged. Your freedom to love God with all of your heart and then to love your neighbor as yourself has never been anywhere interrupted. But has it stayed? Has it continued on? That's the light that the world wants to see from us. (1 Corinthians 15:58, we're almost done. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, stand strong. Like, stand up, make a deal. Be unmovable. About what? Are we clear about what we're standing today? Unmovable? Are you perhaps standing for something else today? Unmovable? Stand up, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding. I like that word, always abounding, meaning increasing in the work of the Lord. In the work of the Lord. Let's do that. In conclusion, we live in a time when we are or will be tempted to react, as I shared about my own feelings. React. React. You do that, I'm going to do this. If you can do that, I can do this. I'll show you what I can do. Or, you know what? Reaction makes us unsober. It causes more pain. It causes discord. But be alert. Let's be alert of our attitude, as I have said today. Our thoughts, our thinking pattern, does it truly bring honor and glory to God? Is your, and when I say yours, I mean myself as much, is your heart pressing for the high mark? Have you pressed? Have you pushed for it? Have you pushed for love of God to increase and to grow? Striving to abound in the work of the Lord? These are questions. Are you and I today willing to say, God, examine my heart and see if there's any kind of iniquity in me? That's easy to pray. It's easy to pray. In fact, many of us pray it probably pretty regularly. Let's stand, let's pray. Lord, we thank you. We are so happy. God, you are a good God, and you make us happy and you make us rejoice so many times. Thank you for the word. Thank you that it's not something that somebody else has to break into pieces and so that we can chew it, but Lord, we can go directly and we realize you have left us on a nice, solid, black and white path to walk. Lord, you have walked with us in the past 2 years, of course, much longer than that. You have always been there, and we thank you for that. Lord, you know every one of our weaknesses and our struggles and our pains, our opinions, and how much we have loved our own opinions, perhaps. God, through this all, we have found it challenging to not get sidetracked, to not lose vision. Therefore, Father, we today stand here and we pray, Lord, will you please examine my heart, our hearts. And everybody that is here today, please close your eyes. Keep your eyes closed. If you agree with this, you can raise your hand as you feel led. God, we pray, examine my heart. And Father, if you will make it known to me that I am wrong, I will repent. If you agree, you raise your hand. Everybody's eyes is closed. God, we pray, lead us in the path of righteousness so that we will pursue the high calling in spite of a challenging circumstance. Bless us with courage. Bless us with hope. Bless us with a looking towards you.